Hi. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. As Jesus passed on from there, he saw a man named Matthew sitting at the customs post. He said to him, "Follow me." And he got up and followed him. On September 21st, we celebrate the feast of St. Matthew, one of the four evangelists, someone very significant in the life of the church. There's much of the life of Jesus that we have that's really unique to St. Matthew's Gospel. For example, the Sermon on the Mount as we know it in several chapters there, the Beatitudes as we have come to know them, the Our Father as we've come to know it. And what we just heard is this calling of St. Matthew. And there's a beautiful depiction of this calling by the Italian artist Caravaggio. We've looked at some of his works before. This painting is in a church called San Luigi dei Francesi in Rome. It's a church for French-speaking people in Rome. And on this one side altar, there are three paintings by Caravaggio. The Calling of St. Matthew, the Martyrdom of St. Matthew, and then above the altar itself, St. Matthew writing the Gospel. Now, this painting is something, if you take a look at it, you'll see there's dark, earthy tones, and as is the case with Caravaggio, there is what we call chiaroscuro, light and darkness. Now, Matthew is sitting there at the customs post, and he has these people around him, and they're all dressed in contemporary clothing at the time. And it's rich clothing. You can see some shimmer off the sleeve of one of the people sitting there on the bench, right? Jesus is over to the side. And Jesus is turning around, and Jesus, and assuming that's Peter, Jesus and Peter are poor and barefoot, dressed the way we would think they would dress at that time. And Jesus is turning around and he's saying to him, "Follow me." And look at the hands. He's pointing and he's saying, "Follow me." And Matthew is pointing to himself, "Me." And then you see Peter kind of pointing his hands as if he's saying, "Him." And look at Jesus' hand there. It resembles really from the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, the creation of Adam there. And this could be a tribute to Michelangelo, simply what he did there. It could also be that Jesus is calling Matthew to be a new creation. And look again at this light and darkness. The light isn't coming through the window. The light is coming from the side. It's coming from above Jesus. And the shouted line is on a diagonal, and it's heading towards Matthew. And you could say Jesus is calling Matthew to be this new creation. Jesus is calling Matthew to come into the light. And in a moment, Matthew is going to get up and leave the counting table and follow the poor and barefoot Jesus. And we're very grateful for what he did and for what he has given to us. And as we celebrate his feast, we ask that he might always assist us with his prayers and inspire us with his example. But this isn't the end of it. In the 8th century, Saint Bede the Venerable wrote a homily about this, and he said, Jesus saw the tax collector, and because he saw him through the eyes of mercy and chose him, he said to him, "Follow me." Jesus looked at him through the eyes of mercy. Now, what it says literally in the Latin doesn't really translate. It says, miserando atque eligendo. Literally, it's mercifying him and choosing him. That Jesus looked upon Matthew with mercy, and he responded. And Jesus calls each of us. He calls each of us in mercy to follow him. But there's still more after this. September 21st, 1953. A young man, 16 years old, the story is, went to confession. And there was nothing particularly unusual about that confession. But afterwards, he came to this realization of the depth of God's love, the depth of God's mercy. And that started to have an effect in his life. And that ultimately he changed his career path. He entered religious life. He was ordained a priest. And eventually he was ordained a bishop. And his Episcopal motto was his Episcopal motto were the words of Saint Bede, miserando atque elegendo, looking with mercy, mercifying, and choosing. And we know this man today as Pope Francis. So this feast of St. Matthew, I think, is an important day in his own life, but it also points to us about the importance of God's mercy, points to us about the importance of the sacrament of reconciliation. Obviously, that's played a big effect in his life, and there are times when he has publicly heard confessions. There's even a time when he has publicly gone to confession himself. But the sacrament of reconciliation is an encounter with God's love and with God's mercy. And really, what we confess there is our sins, of course, but we also confess that God's mercy is more powerful than our sins. And with his help, we get up and we continue to move forward. And so I encourage you to think about sharing in the sacrament of reconciliation. Sometimes people are nervous before they go, particularly if it's been a while. It's important to remember that the priest is there to help you. He is there to help you. And as I tell our little kids making their first reconciliation, it's okay to be nervous before you go to confession. If you're nervous, that can be a good thing because it means that we're uncomfortable with sin in our lives. But it's nothing to be afraid of. Let us continue to pray for each other during these challenging times, and let us continue to rejoice in hope, to endure in affliction, and to persevere in prayer. Thank you for joining me. God bless you.